How about this relaunch, right? Fantastic talk. Um, I'm here to talk a little bit more on a technical aspect. So today I'll be showing you how you can build your first Chrome extension. Again, a little bit about me. I'm a recent School of Code graduate. I've only 3 days ago started my first role as a front-end software engineer at Eternal. You can check us out at eternal.life, and we're in the business of preserving memories for future generations. You can also find out other random bits about me that you probably don't care about on my website. And I thought I'd kind of leave that up on the screen so that you can notice it's exactly my name to just kind of make you a bit jealous. Like I literally have dev in my name. Anyway, why would you want to build a Chrome extension? So obviously it's quite fun to do. You can automate some repetitive tasks in the browser. You can add your own custom browser or website functionality, and you can share it with the world with the Chrome Web Store. So everyone can access it, and not just people that are versed in pulling down repos from GitHub, doing all that kind of complicated stuff, etc. After this lightning talk, hopefully you will go away with some good knowledge on how Chrome extensions work, some basic extension structure, how you can access browser permissions and manipulate the DOM, how you can store user preferences, and also what's the fastest way to build a Chrome extension, because believe me, it can be quite slow and tedious. First, a little bit of theory. How do Chrome extensions actually work? So I'm going to exit out of my actual slides. You've definitely used a Chrome extension before. I'm on the wrong browser. Never mind. We'll kind of carry on as before. You've got a little pop-up here, which is when you click on the icon. You've got a little bit of interactivity on that, which is its own pop-up script. So far, so good. Pretty self-explanatory. We've also got a background script. Now, this is something quite interesting because this is a script that loads as soon as you initialize your extension, and you can have it running persistently in the background as well, possibly to feed it some logic about how your extension works. And finally, you've got the content script, in my opinion, probably the most exciting part. This is the bit that can kind of interact with the DOM and change things on the page. Unfortunately, apart from the pop-up script having access to the background script, it doesn't really have access to the content, however, but instead these scripts can kind of send and receive messages between each other. You can kind of think of it as the front end and the back end communicating, except it's a bit different because we're in Chromium, but you'll see that in practice in a second. We're going to build our Chrome extension today using a customized boilerplate. We're also going to use a script for hot reloading. And of course, we're going to use the best practices because, we're superstar, rock star developers. To get started, well, you probably won't have time to clone the repo for like an 8-minute lightning talk, but the thought's there. You can get this link after the end of the talk, and you can follow the README, very self-explanatory, super, super fast to get started. Ooh, light theme. I almost went blind. But let's code, or at least let's look at code as much as we have time. This is kind of the basic structure of our Chrome extension. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to start with kind of looking at the manifest.json, which is really where a lot of the action kind of happens and where you're going to be kind of putting some of the basic work to get your extension started. We have a name, a version, a description, an icon. So far, so good. And we're going to start looking into the interesting bits down here. But first, let's actually load this into the browser. So once you clone down the repo, the way you can actually load this into Chrome is by going to Chrome /extensions. You can enable developer mode up at the toggle on the top right. Then you can click on load unpacked. And if my machine loads, I can open up that folder. So yeah, beautiful. We've already got our Brum.JS Chrome extension. The great thing about our fast reload script is that any kind of change I make right now, it will immediately reload, well, not just the extension, but also the current page that you're on to be 100% sure that the change you've made has gone through. And the way we do this is through the background script declaration here in the manifest. So there's a little bit of a gotcha here that I'd like to maybe just spend a couple of seconds talking about. You can only set this to be either one script or one single HTML file. And the way you can kind of circumvent that is by including multiple scripts inside of your HTML file. So if we go into source, background, and then background.html, you can see I've got two scripts. One is the hot reload, which is the thing I just demoed. And the second one is the background script, which doesn't really do anything too fancy at the moment. It's got a console log that we kind of log as soon as we start the extension. And then we're also listening out for messages from any of the other scripts. And just to kind of show you that console log, we can click on the inspect views here, and we can definitely see it's initializing, it's going through. So that's good news for us. Moving on, we have the options page. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail in just a second. And next we have the browser action. Now this is probably kind of your first thought when you think of like a Chrome extension. Again, a bit of a gotcha here. There's two types of actions that you can define. Either a page action, and let me actually change this now, and notice that the icon has gone gray, which means that it's only going to be valid for the URLs that you specify or the pages that you specify, versus if you change it back to a browser action, oops, seem to have made a little typo there, it's going to be available across inside the browser at all times. So that's a bit of a decision you have to make there. And again, pretty self-explanatory at this point. You have a little title, which is what comes up when you hover over the button, a pop-up, and this page you can create in plain old HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or you can use React, which is a bit more complicated. I'd actually recommend going the vanilla route. And finally, this is probably the part you've all been waiting for, permissions, content scripts, and web accessible resources. So permissions, as you probably know, kind of like creating an app, you do need to give it some access to certain things from the browser. These are just some basic ones that I need for my extension, but you can read into the Chrome extension docs for all the details on that. And finally, content scripts. You can have as many of these as you want. I've created just one for google.com today. So let's actually go and see what happens. Hey, that's beautiful. You know, we've just created a much more aesthetically pleasing Google logo. Like, I'm just going to propose that change. Hopefully they go through with it. And as you can guess from the syntax here, you can inject any kind of CSS and JavaScript on the page. You can also specify when you want to run it. So I've just said document end, which means that the page will preload and my custom script is going to be injected afterwards. And one other great bonus thing to kind of look at here is if I actually open up my dev tools and I look at this image, we can see that the source is currently being loaded from the Chrome extension itself. And this is fantastic. So this is an asset, a resource that I have hosted nowhere on the web, but it's being served in real time because it is bundled within the extension. And this is actually very, very easy to use. As you can guess, you can just specify a route inside of your application that you're going to make accessible kind of to the browser in terms of files. And if we go to the google.js file, we can see the syntax for this as well. It's simply chrome.runtime get URL, and then you can specify the path to that file. One last thing, as I realize I've just kind of hit close to 8 minutes, options are fantastic. This particular boilerplate uses oh, are you cutting me off? Hello? Nope. Okay, cool. Carrying on. Sorry, because I thought someone gave me a shout. Sweet. This extension uses a great boilerplate called fancy settings. So as you know, you may want to, when creating your extension, have some type of user input that you can store persistently. So if I right click and select options, here's like a quick demo. This essentially uses local storage. So anything that I type in here is going to persist, even if I reload the page, navigate away from it, come back. And as you can tell, you can have like all sorts of different inputs here. You know, you've got the sliders, you've got drop-down menus. It's great, and you can store any kind of user data with this UI. And just like what I showed you in manifest.json, this uses a similar type of syntax where you can very quickly define tabs, groups, names, and your inputs. Right, back to the presentation. Couple of final things just before I sign off. You can get some resources to get yourself started other than the repo. Extensionizer.com is great. I actually highly recommend it over the basic thing that Google provides you with. And definitely look at some articles to get inspired if you ever want to build something like this. Publishing your extension is going to cost you $5 the first time round, but after you pay that registration fee, you can publish as many of them as you want on the Chrome Web Store. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, Brum.JS, for a not very lightning 10-minute lightning talk. My name is Stefan. You can find me on the links below, and I will send you out the slides in the repo after the end of the talk as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. This is really good. Yeah, silent clapping. Cool. Thank you very much, Stefan. That was